Welcome to Lisbon in Portugal and the Dacia Jogger, which looks just like another Jogger, except this is the first Dacia that has a battery. An onboard 1.2 kilowatt hour self-charging hybrid battery, and the idea is this 1.6 petrol mated to the battery with an automatic gearbox will give you more performance. And to be honest with you, a lot of time when you're talking about hybrids and self-charging hybrids and plug-in hybrids, it's all very confusing, isn't it? The question is always, yeah, but it's 5,000 extra or it's 10,000 extra. How do you justify that extra cost? That's still a point, but the difference in this Jogger is the engine is actually better suited to the size of the car. It's a large car, it's a 7-seater. Perfect if you're a taxi driver. Perfect if you've got a lot of kids. What were you thinking of? But you want an affordable option. The Jogger gives you all that, but the other 3-cylinder engine is just a little bit underpowered for the size of the car. It's also sitting on a platform that belongs to a Renault Clio, which is kind of confusing to get your head around when you look at how long it is, but it all works. So today's video here on Nobby on Cars, we're going to find out, should you actually pay the extra cash and is it worth it in the Jogger Hybrid? So when it comes to the hybrid, there's 2 trim levels. There's 3 on the standard petrol Jogger. This is called Shadow Grey. You can only get this colour on the hybrid. And the thing I love about the Jogger, whatever trim spec you go for, there's only one option, and that's paint. Everything else is standard. There's a whole load of safety kit on board this car is standard. Things like blind spot, frontal collision avoidance. It has the new Dacia logo across the car at the front, also on the steering wheel. And the instrument cluster looks very Renault-ish, of course, who are well connected with Dacia. So if you sat into last generation Megane, the Zoe, it all looks a little bit familiar. They still have the clever stuff like the holder for your phone, so you can integrate your own CarPlay with the car's infotainment system. And obviously this is an automatic because it's a hybrid. So arguably again, that also makes it a kind of just a more enjoyable car to be behind the wheel of. There's still plenty of space for your rear passengers directly behind the driver and passenger. You have those fold-out tray tables, which kids love. And despite the fact that you've got extra leg room needed for the back, it's still pretty decent on that second row of seats. Quick reminder as well, the Jogger is long. It's over 4 meters. You have these modular roof rails, so that means you can twist them to whatever angle you want to benefit your snowboarding, your bikes, whether you're a surfer, loads of options going on here. And that brings you around to the boot, which is still as good as ever. So back of the Jogger is still the same. Yes, there is a battery on board this one, but it hasn't impacted the rear of the car. 599 litres is what the boot has if you have the 3rd row of seats down. Now don't forget, you can just remove them, pull them out of the car if you don't want to use them anymore and you just want that extra size. But I suppose if you're going to buy the 7-seater, you're going to want to invariably use the larger seat capacity. So it still has a bit of a lip, but you know, we have our camera equipment in here today and there's still plenty of space. Height wise, you could really fill this up, and 599, I mean, you're talking Skoda levels of space in the back of the Jogger. A bit of shelter from this as well. If it's going to rain today, might be a little bit optimistic with the sunglasses because of the cloud in Lisbon today. It probably would benefit from an electric tailgate or even a handle that you could pull. You have 2 options in here, but it is quite a big boot, and even in terms of parking spaces, you're going to need a bit of room at the back. The only way you'll know this is the Jogger Hybrid is because it has a little hybrid badge on the back. So some of us Irish have managed to bring the rain to Portugal today, which is a good start. There's actually 2 electric motors going on in this car. One assists with pulling away from a set of lights. It's a smaller sort of output, and then you have 49 horsepower with that 1.6 petrol. And as we mentioned earlier on in the video, it really improves the performance of the Jogger. It's not a massively heavy car, you know, in the context of 7-seaters. If you are going to be regularly carrying more passengers and using the 7 seats to your advantage, then it's just nice to have that extra bit of power. And it seems to work quite well. Officially it says up to 70 kilometers an hour in full pure EV mode. If that battery does deplete, the petrol engine will kick in and it will charge it, and just cycle just keeps going over and over again. And that is a 1.2 kilowatt hour battery, so very, very small, similar size to what you might get in a Toyota, in a self-charging hybrid Toyota. If you do get into a situation where you need to overtake vehicles, that we did today on the route down to Lisbon, there is enough grunt to overtake caravans and trucks and stuff like that. Again, they're the kind of things that in the smaller jogger engine you might just feel it's a little bit underwhelming at times. One thing that may or may not affect you, depending on just the design of your own legs, is how much your knee will hit off the side column in the car. That may be a factor or may not be. You might end up kind of attaching something soft. I know it seems like being over dramatic there, but something soft, just because it's quite harsh plastic, and that resting against your leg can be a little bit annoying. But you can't take your foot off the accelerator because there's cruise control on the car. As we mentioned, good safety options, including blind spot, which is quite a long car, so again, it's just nice to have these additional safety aids that would generally cost extra. So the car is not going to appear in Ireland until well into the second half of 2023 at a minimum. Also, at the time of filming today, we don't have prices for Ireland. Now in Portugal, it's not quite €30,000, and I know they do have their fair share of vehicle tax in Portugal also. But my question today is, will this be the first Dacia to well exceed €30,000, and will it creep into something like 35,000?
Prepared to go over the roundabout after 800 meters.
No problem. And well, that will raise a whole set of different questions then for the brand, because it will just get closer, maybe not in a 7-seater capacity closer, but it will get closer in price to more mainstream brands. And if you don't actually need the 5 additional seats for you and your passenger at the front, but you just kind of fancy the idea of a 7-seater for when your mates, your kids' mates need to go on play dates and stuff like that, it still, in my opinion, needs to stay in the low 30s for it to be kind of all out there on its own. There's things like the Opel Combi van and stuff that will then just be another option, and a slightly more prestigious brand. Good bit of mixed driving today in the car today, and 4.1 litres per 100 kilometres seems to be where it's sitting. Again, that's pretty good for a 7-seater. Just overtaking some cyclists, and yeah, it gets a little bit noisy under load, but again, that pickup is a lot stronger than on the smaller petrol engine. And as I'm going to say quite a few times in this video today, for that reason alone, I think it's worth considering the extra initial outlay in the car. If you are someone who likes to hang on to your cars for life, you get an 8-year, 160,000 kilometer warranty on the battery. So that would probably cover a lot of people in terms of their ownership, and probably the second person even who will own your jogger should you move on and upgrade or do a PCP deal. Also in the automatic gearbox there is a B mode, which is for your regen, that will put additional energy that would usually be lost from braking back into that battery, so it'll charge on the move. And while it's not one pedal driving by any stretch of the imagination, there is enough resistance there that when you're in B mode, again, this is really going to suit you if you do a lot of around town driving. When you lift off the accelerator, you can definitely feel enough pressure applying that if you gave yourself enough space to slow down with a set of lights ahead, or kind of the type of driving where you can predict that you're going to need to brake, that will add kind of again another benefit of having that automatic gearbox. And again, if you're using this car as a workhorse, it's another benefit in my opinion of having the hybrid. So if your family setup resembles the Waltons, for those of you old enough to remember, it's a great option. And equally, if you're watching this and you drive a taxi for a living, this in my opinion is a no-brainer type of car, and very much so in the self-charging hybrid, because you're going to have a cheaper car to run around town, and you'll get really decent fuel economy and the added bonus of having an automatic gearbox to go with it as well. It'll just make your working life an awful lot easier. The question will be, how soon can you get your hands on one, and will there be a long lead time if you're interested? But you'll have to chat to your dealer about that. So there's no question, cars are getting more and more expensive, and even Dacia, who were once a really budget brand, are creeping up in prices, and especially when you're paying for the hybrid version. But there is no doubt about it, this is a better engine, it's better suited to the size of the car, and where a lot of cases we're looking at extra costs on that walk from the standard petrol to a hybrid. It is definitely still a factor, but if you're able to stretch to the hybrid, you will get a better car to drive without a shadow of a doubt. Thank you very much for coming with us this far in the video. If you do want to support what is a fully independent YouTube channel, you can hit us up on buymeacoffee.com/Nobby on Cars. €5 tip if this has helped you narrow down your shortlist for the Jogger. See you on the next one.